Yeah, we have two really special guests here today, taking us on a trip down memory lane right into the history of Ethereum. Ethereum is the second largest blockchain technology in the world right now. When we talk about market cap, when we talk about use cases, it's definitely the largest in the world right now. It's often called the world computer. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of developers globally building their products on this decentralized network. And today we are joined by Christoph Jentzsch. He's a very early member of the Ethereum team. He worked on the core protocol back in the days in 2014, and he's also the main player behind the DAO, which was the first decentralized autonomous organization. And then we have with us Vitalik Buterin. I don't think he needs a further introduction. He's the co-founder of Ethereum, and he's the public figurehead. And as we will see, he's also a really great tech philosopher.
Thanks. Since we are here in a historic building in the old planetarium, we thought this place would be perfect, not only to look into the past, but also to look into the stars, into the future as well. So with this session, we try out something new. First, we will have the chance to listen to an intimate dialogue between Vitalik and Christoph about their common time in the Ethereum project. Then we will open up the session and bring in the questions that we have about the world of crypto and decentralization. But we will also, and that's the most important thing, bring in your questions and ask them to Vitalik and Christoph. So if you ever wanted to ask him something, now is the time to do so. Please write your questions in the chat. In the end, we will have a special announcement to make, so please hang on. And now, without further ado, and I hope we have the connection right and ready. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Christoph Jentzsch and Vitalik Buterin.
Okay, then let's start.
Yeah, okay.
So, great to be here with you, Vitalik. You have been introduced shortly. I will do a short introduction. Born in Russia in 1994, so he's 9 years younger than me, but much smarter. But he migrated to Canada in his childhood. He was the co-founder of the Bitcoin magazine. That's actually the first time I had any contact with you. I read some articles in the Bitcoin magazine, and I found it already very astonishing how well articulated and how actually easy to understand, very difficult technical concepts I could read there. So I was very impressed by your writing skills. And I should add that your writing skills are, in my opinion, also one big reason why you could gather such a great community and it made Ethereum to what it was. So in 2013, you explored the crypto space by traveling around the world, several projects, and then found what was missing. December 2013, you wrote the white paper. And after that, countless articles on your blog about crypto in general, but also game theory, radical markets, smart cities, and many, many other topics, as you mentioned before, a tech philosopher. So with this, we want to talk a bit about the history of Ethereum, where we stand now, and what we see in the future. So maybe in your words, Vitalik, what do you think were the main events or thoughts which led to the white paper, without which it wouldn't be possible to write such a paper?
So I guess my own part of the story is that I first joined the Bitcoin community in March 2011. I eventually found it on the internet. I discovered this very interesting group of people that was trying to just make this Bitcoin thing happen. A lot of people with very diverse interests, people interested in the math, people interested in the economics, people interested in the politics, people interested in the social questions, the cryptography, the open source software aspects, and all of these different viewpoints coming together and creating this very new kind of thing that was really very unlike the currencies that existed before and very unlike the open source software that existed before, right? I mean, before something like Bitcoin, if you want to make even a piece of open source software that could let lots of people interact with each other, you just had to have some kind of server if you wanted the whole thing to be able to have some kind of memory, right? And blockchains and consensus and proof of work and all of these things basically solve that problem. So I immediately found the concept exciting. I jumped into the community, and I started thinking, like, how can I personally become part of this community? And I searched through the forums, and I found someone who was willing to pay me 5 Bitcoins per article, which back then was $4 to write articles for his blog. So I started doing that. And then from there, I started getting into Bitcoin more and more, understanding the concept more, writing articles. Soon after that, I joined Bitcoin Magazine. And then after about 2 years, I dropped out of university and went into the space full time. And right the end of 2013, this was when people were really starting to think more about this concept of, like, can we use blockchains to do more than just a cryptocurrency? So especially in Israel at the time, there was a very impressive and big community trying to do this. There was Colored Coins, this project that was trying to issue digital assets on the blockchain. There was Mastercoin that was doing financial contracts. So there were a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things, and I started poking into these protocols, and I started suggesting features, suggesting ideas for how these protocols could become more general purpose. And then eventually I got to the point where I had this realization that if you want to make a protocol that's really general purpose and that allows all of these cool different ideas, like whether it's decentralized finance, although it wasn't called a DeFi back then, or decentralized autonomous organizations, or any of these other things to be able to happen. Like, it just made sense to have a protocol that's just really designed from scratch around being a general purpose in that way. So I wrote the white paper in November, and I started spreading it around first to some friends and some people I knew. And I discovered immediately that there was a lot of interest. I think around the same time, a lot of other people were also thinking similar thoughts. Gavin Wood and Jeffrey Wilkie replied back, and even Jeffrey Wilkie had also been working in, or at least poking into some of this other kind of blockchain beyond Bitcoin space, I guess, was one of the ways they would describe it back then. And they were immediately started being core developers. There were a lot of other people who expressed interest very quickly. So the project basically just started from there.
Yeah, and I think it was a very different start than you would see in like a classical Silicon Valley VC-backed startup, where there are like 2 or 3 founders with a business plan and so on. So actually, how many founders were there? Like sometimes I heard like 40 founders. Like, is there any number? How many people would you consider founders?
Right. The 72 co-founders thing is a bit of a meme. I guess it's like the number of quote official co-founders was 8, but like really the number of contributors was very high almost from the beginning, right? And I think there are a lot of people who did a lot of really important work, even from close to the start of the project. That really, I think if you look back at it now, like if a sociologist from Mars came in and tried to ask like who are the co-founders, they would probably think that they're the co-founders too, but they haven't been recognized. Like Vlad, for example, like Vlad Zamfir did, never recognized as a co-founder, but also did a lot of kind of very foundational thinking about like what Ethereum moving to proof of stake and what things like sharding would look like. So it's like the project's just kind of flipped from nobody working on it to dozens of people working on it very quickly.
And most of those people you just met online or in certain forums and discussion groups, or did you also know some of them personally before who joined?
The one person that I deeply knew personally would be Mihai Alicia. He was the co-founder of, well, I guess the founder of Bitcoin Magazine. So he hired me in September 2011, and I became Bitcoin Magazine's first writer. And then once I started Ethereum, like he immediately thought that this was exciting and jumped into it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that time. I was doing my PhD in theoretical physics and reading a lot about Bitcoin in 2013. And I somehow found it in, I think, January or February of 2014. In some forum, someone posted a white paper. And it totally blew me away because I was fascinated by Bitcoin, this idea you could do something like decentralized money, which is totally sovereign. And then the Ethereum white paper just show all the other use cases which could be built in a similar spirit and as Bitcoin was. You predicted actually a lot of use cases in the white paper. You wrote about DAOs, you wrote about something like name system or Namecoin, similar systems. You wrote a simple DeFi, let's call it DeFi. Back then, I think it was something like a hedge contract. You even wrote in there. So you kind of predicted DeFi, DAOs, name systems, and other things. So what was your expectation of what Ethereum would become? Back in this like Q1, Q2, 2014, like did you think about a for-profit company? I know like people like Charles Hoskinson maybe thought in this direction, but the group, what did you think Ethereum would become? What was your intention?
I think like my view from the beginning was always that Ethereum is supposed to be this kind of open public project that's there for the good of the world. And so I was always like not very excited about going down the corporate route for it, even if the corporate route could lead to us getting money quickly. Just because like if we go down that route, then the protocol would be tied to an organization, and that organization would have shareholders, and those shareholders would feel entitled to have a lot of influence over the protocol. And just the idea of like money from a crowd sale going into an entity that has shareholders. So all of those things never really kind of sat too well with me. I guess the counter argument was basically that making a corporation is just a tried and true way of just getting something with a lot of funding and getting it to scale and doing things quickly. But the nonprofit route did end up winning after about a few months of arguments. That's what the Ethereum Foundation became since then. Though, of course, since then, there definitely are a good share of the early participants or the co-founders that did go on to fund their companies, some of which did some very important stuff for the ecosystem, right? Like Joe Lubin split off and started Consensus, and Consensus did MetaMask, and MetaMask is really important for the ecosystem now. I think it turned out well. I think I guess the way that the ecosystem works now kind of allows for the core contributors to kind of stay focused on building out the vision without any as many kind of side incentives there to distract them. And there's just a lot of people like everywhere else in the ecosystem that are building out all the other different pieces.
So I just want to say, when I actually joined the Ethereum Foundation, this was right after the crowd sale in the summer of 2014. I actually had the same experience as you just described. It was not about making money. It was purely about building this product and getting it to the people. I mean, actually, the money was raised to build this product, and there was, at least I didn't know about it, clear plan for what comes afterwards, or after the money is spent. So I joined in the group of Gavin Wood. We built the C++ client and worked on I basically worked on testing, but I found it a great place to work. It was very open. Everybody could contribute. Everybody could easily come in. I think it was always a very important thing for Ethereum, this permissionless entry. You could just go on GitHub and start working and making some pull requests and maybe be hired by the foundation, maybe not, but everybody could really join somehow the project. But if you now think, we spoke about the white paper a little bit, what is the most surprising use case which you maybe didn't predict in the white paper, or which development has Ethereum taken which was not foreseen, let's say, in 2014?
I feel like all of the major kind of categories were foreseen, right? Like the white paper talks about domain names, and now we have ENS. The white paper talked about like different kinds of financial contracts, but now like lots of people are still doing that, except it has a name. It's called DeFi. DeFi was not a name back then. People like we were talking about DAOs. People were doing DAOs. So I think like the categories are actually surprisingly similar to what we expected all along. I mean, the big surprising thing, of course, is just the sheer scale to which the whole thing has just been successful and attracted so much attention. Well, like back in 2014, I definitely could not have imagined that the crypto space could get anywhere near the level of scale that it has right now. Like at the beginning, I expected Ethereum to just be a kind of very short-term project, do it for a few months, get it out there, and then go back to university. But then that just ended up never happening.
It was exciting. I mean, after the Crowdsale, speak about the time between Crowdsale and launch. So did you have any expectation of how much money the Ethereum Foundation would raise for the Crowdsale? Did you have like targets or hopes?
I definitely remember being very uncertain. Like I remember like, okay, it could get only a couple of million, it could get 25 million, just because this was this very new thing that had never been done on that scale before. So definitely very uncertain going in. I think it definitely turned out better than I hoped. I did have, I just realized one answer to the question of like what type of application I did not predict. NFTs. I totally did not predict NFTs. NFTs totally caught me blindsided. That's been a really fun space to watch.
I agree. I mean, we talk about ownership, but more about similar direction of ERC20 tokens or some kind of ICO craziness, but not NFTs. I think it is also a very exciting space. But speaking about scale, so how big was the team at like the end of 2014? Do you remember how many people worked on the foundation roughly?
It was somewhere between 25 and 50. I forget exactly how many.
Yeah. So I worked sometimes in the Berlin office, mostly from home. And I think the Berlin office we had around like 10 to 15 people, I guess, working on the C++ client and other topics. And actually, we started there with things like Remix and Solidity and things we thought about at least very early on, which I also found very interesting. So how would you describe this team, which just says 25 to 50 people? Was it only developers, or was it also some marketing, or how would you describe the kind of people who joined? Was it people from the corporate world, or was it just like anarchists and people who want to,
I think there was some of both, right? Like one of the things that I think Ethereum was good at fairly on is this kind of culture of internal diversity. Right, like I think, especially like at the Berlin office and like within Gavin's team and within Jeff's team, it was definitely very heavy on developer types. But then there were also other parts that were just like enthusiasts about all kinds of Ethereum applications. And then it's like closer to the beginning, there were definitely a lot of the business and marketing sort of people that were part of the foundation as well. I think end of 2014 is like the part where the developers kind of really expanded, and that became really the biggest part of what the foundation is doing. So I feel like there have always been these kind of different sub-teams that have somewhat different internal cultures, and that's been, I think, continuing to be true all the way up until now.
Yeah, and then I think a difficult question I remember, launching the project, maybe you can talk a bit about this. So what were the criteria for launching Ethereum, like pushing the button, and how did this happen? Like, in the end, there was a very early prototype, actually even before the Crowdsale, written by Gavin, I think in C++, which kind of did work. Of course, it evolved. And as we all know from software development, you always add some features, functionality, and so on. So what was your main criteria for being ready for launch, and how did the launch happen?
So I think around the end of 2014, the clients got to the point where it felt like everything was feature complete. It felt like we were having these proof of concept test nets that were starting to be fairly stable. And we looked through the list of features that we wanted to have, and some of them were included. There were some others that ended up never making it into mainnet. Like, for example, I remember that for POC 7, one of the ideas that I pushed for early on is that we would add the ability for transactions to make a delayed post message. So a transaction could make a call, and then that call would only happen after 10 blocks or after 100 blocks. And looking back at that today, we actually know that that would have been completely unviable. There were issues with gas limits, and it would actually be really hard to make secure and really complicated. So the decision to not add that feature in at the time was, I think, a really good one. But there were a lot of decisions like this. At some point, we just realized, okay, we have what we need, and what's left was to stabilize. So in January 2015, I think the planning started around December 2014, but it happened in January 2015. We went around and we did some security audits. So there was a team in Seattle, I forget their name now, that did an audit of the Ethereum the implementations. I personally went on a trip to lovely snowy Cornell in February, and I talked to Itai Ayao, who did an audit of a lot of the consensus layer mechanics. Also talks to Andrew Miller and also some least authority people. The least authority people did some work. So just a whole bunch of audits. Then at the beginning of March, we did, myself, Gavin, and Jeff came to Berlin, and we did this 3-day kind of rapid hackathon, and we just quickly coded up POC 9, and we got POC 9 into consensus. And that turned into Olympic, which was the test network. And the idea was that if Olympic runs long enough, then and it runs long enough without having any bugs, then we would basically flip the switch and we would launch, right? So at the beginning, I don't think we knew what the goals were, because at the beginning Olympic just kept on crashing a lot. But then slowly, over time, it just kept on getting better. April was more stable than March. May was more stable than April. We eventually agreed that if there were no issues for, I think it was 2 weeks, then we would do a code freeze, and then after another 2 weeks, we would actually launch the main network. And it was around the end of June that the target was hit. So did a code freeze, then 2 weeks later finally pulled the trigger. We decided what the block number of Olympic was. There was one particular block number that we chose, it was a block number in the future, and the hash of that block number would go into the seed of, or go into the extra data of the first block on the main network. And that would basically force it so that the main network could only start when the Olympic network hits a particular height. So that basically set a very particular deadline. The Olympic network actually hit that deadline, and we were a lot of us were gathered in Berlin in our office in Berlin on, I think it was 43 Waldemarstrasse or something like that. And we we're sitting around waiting for block 1026.201 on Olympic to hit, and eventually it did. And of course, immediately people started kind of plugged the hash of that block in as the extra data of the first block with the mainnet settings, and people launched the mainnet, and everyone was standing around and watching, and everyone was celebrating, and it was a very happy evening. And that's how the Ethereum network came into existence.
Yeah, I think it was very exciting to see that actually nobody did push the button. It was just a description out there of how you would launch it, and many actually did do it simultaneously. And it merged into this one chain only after I don't know how many, maybe 1 or 2 hours, when some chains actually came together. But yeah, nobody pushed the button to start Ethereum. It was really done by the community. I remember working towards delaying the date by always finding some bugs, which made it launching a little bit later. But we did have some troubles afterwards. I think there was a hard fork only a couple of weeks later, a small one. But eventually it became stable. But looking back at this launch, is there any important feature where you would have said this should have happened in the first version, be it state rent, proof of stake? Those were things we dismissed at the time because of its difficulties and other. Was there anything you would say we should have put this in, this was a mistake, or say no, it was just right?
Account abstraction, possibly. That's one of the things that we've just been fighting for such a long time after that, right? And just kind of the fight to get good smart contract wallets out there. There are chains other than Ethereum, right, where they don't really do that much interesting on a lot of the tech, but they do have this one thing where they have a built-in, more advanced smart contract wallet design where you just have built-in multisig or built-in social recovery, and where people end up using it. So if Ethereum had just some built-in smart contract wallet capability that was easy to use from the beginning, I think we could have done a lot better on that.
Even though the Ethereum Foundation used the multisig from day one, the multisig at least was existing as a smart contract.
This is true, yeah, it did exist. And I think it's more complicated than it needs to be, right? Because in order to use a multisig, you also have to have Ether in the wallets that talk to the multisig. So like it ends up being fairly unwieldy if you just wanted to like as a way to securely store your funds as an individual. But yeah, for organizations, it works great.
I think it's astonishing that the Ethereum Foundation still uses the same multisig as we had in 2015. And it did keep up like security-wise and all those things. It is still secure and the foundation is using it. Okay, let's now move on to the next stage before we look into the future and what Ethereum is today. So after the launch, we saw in 2015 the first ICOs, but then of course the DAO happened, and that's a long story for another day. I mean, we won't talk too much about it today, but it raised a lot of money. It failed eventually. It led to a hard fork. And afterwards, we saw this ICO craze. Like, how did you feel doing like the DAO and then afterwards the ICO craziness? Did you ever worried about Ethereum, or did you ever think like, what did I do? Like, what did I start? And there's like all the scams and all the bad things also happening. Did you any questioning a project at any time?
I mean, the ICO boom was definitely like a little bit of that. Like it got to the point where there were like projects that were raising money and raising a lot of money to start new coins, but the way that they were doing it was just completely centralized, right? Like they're basically saying, here's our address, just give us $100 million and trust us. And like that, I mean, like on the one hand, I do see how it's like a powerful mechanism for bringing in capital and actually getting these projects started. But on the other hand, like it always felt like, okay, you know, we created this system, and the purpose of this system is to allow people to cooperate with each other without needing to trust each other as much. And we do this with, you know, decentralization and by giving power to mechanisms instead of giving power to individuals. But then these people come along and they're like, you know, yo, dog, like you got a blockchain, just you know, send $100 million to my EOA, and you all just trust me. So that like it did feel like sort of not the Ethereum way. And of course, on top of that, like there was a lot of this kind of get rich quick mentality that, you know, really kind of bubbles up a lot every time there's a really big price rise. So parts of that disappointed me. I do think things are better now. I mean, I do like now, you know, 2020 and 2021, there's just so much more interest in DAOs, and lots of people are starting DAOs, and there's a lot more sophisticated thinking about like how could DAO governance work, how does it actually make sense to start one of these projects. So it's gotten really interesting. But I mean, like that initial kind of bubble in 2017, it definitely was like not the sort of thing that I built Ethereum for. I mean, I think there's definitely other examples since then, though. I guess I maintain my optimistic hope that whenever one of these instances of people doing crazy things shows up, like that's just the first phase, and eventually, like the reason why the crazy approach is unsustainable becomes obvious to people, and 2 or 3 years later, the ecosystem kind of quiets down and turns it into something much better. So I mean, I feel like it's happened with ICOs so far. So you know, I'm hoping that NFTs will kind of turn into something that's you know, stable and financially stable, though it might take one full bear market cycle for them to do that. Yeah, we'll see.
I completely agree with you, but I also felt this was a time that people thought like people working in the blockchain space are usually scammers, greedy, it's all just about this, and the public awareness was pretty negative because of all the things which happened. And I think, yes, we are moving into a much better direction by having much better projects, but you're seeing the same thing sometimes again. The first phase of NFTs sometimes goes in a similar direction for some of them at least, and of course there's some real stuff also happening. But with this, maybe let's get to what Ethereum is today. I think we spoke enough about history. It was an exciting time. I think we didn't speak about all the ups and downs. There were financially for the foundation, I think there were good and bad times, and you went through all of that. But if you think about Ethereum today, what do you think is Ethereum's greatest accomplishment so far?
Let's see. I mean, I think there's a few. One is like just surviving and just actually becoming an ecosystem to the extent that it has. Another is, I think, creating this environment where there's a lot of people who are actually building all of these applications that were kind of part of the Ethereum dream since the beginning. And actually, like, you know, 6 years ago we were talking about DeFi. Now there is DeFi. 6 years ago we were talking about DAOs. Now we actually have DAOs. 6 years ago talking about ENS, now we actually have ENS, and how all of these different applications that can work together, and like also actually the fact that all of these different pieces are, I feel like, are finally starting to kind of turn into a coherent vision of like what Ethereum could end up bringing to the world. Like I feel like even a year ago, right, a lot of the public narrative discourse was much more like, okay, Ethereum doesn't have a narrative. Like, okay, like 2 years ago, Ethereum was about, well, like the Ethereum narrative was ICO. Now ICOs are gone. 1 year ago, the Ethereum narrative was DeFi, and now the Ethereum narrative is DAO. And like, why do you guys keep changing things? And I mean, I guess like you can understand why some people would believe that, especially if they come from the kind of like Bitcoin mindset that a blockchain is supposed to be for one type of thing. But Ethereum was always about like about people building many types of things and all of these things talking to each other. But now it's much more clear that like what is going on here basically is, one way to describe it would be actually creating some kind of decentralized alternative to the metaverse, right? Like it actually is this digital world. People can do things in this world. These people can kind of be in these little islands. They can move between these little islands. They can talk to each other. They can hold assets inside of it. They can trade assets, and all of these all of these things are actually happening. Kind of like the culture around it is one that's I think much more solid than it was even 1 or 2 years ago. So I think just getting to that point and just getting to the point where it actually is starting to like present at least some kind of coherent vision of an internet that's more open, more decentralized, and at the same time more fun.
I'm fully with you, and I also think one thing which I am always amazed about is the Ethereum community. When I see it in 2014 and 15 and how it is today, how would you describe? Did you think did some of the spirit change over the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years? Or how would you describe the Ethereum community compared to 2014, 15, and over the years until now? You're also traveling the world, you see much more of them. I only know a subset. How diverse or how big is the Ethereum community?
The Ethereum community is very deep, and it just continually impresses me with how deep it is, and like the people who are Ethereum people in corners that I just never expect, right? Like there's Ethereum people doing all kinds of projects in every corner of the world. There's Ethereum people who like in all kinds of corporations. There's Ethereum people in all kinds of governments. There's people working on and building things, in the financial industry and in the gaming industry, and in the, I guess what you could call the digital democracy space. So a lot of just very diverse and different kinds of people building different things is definitely one thing that I'm just continually impressed by. Like, if you have any if you are interested in something, then chances are there is some kind of Ethereum sub-community that's already building around that something.
Yeah, it just grow over the time, and it's always good. No matter where you are, at which conference, some kind of blockchain conferences, you meet Ethereum people, and always working on exciting stuff. Speaking about exciting stuff, you talked about how Ethereum was like first about ICOs, then DeFi, NFTs, DAOs. What are some projects which you are very excited about, or which directions which you're currently seeing? Maybe beyond this, or is it just one of those?
Some projects that I'm seeing going beyond DAOs and going beyond NFTs.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like one of them is just the effort to expand NFTs so that instead of like just being shiny pet rocks that you buy and trade in auction, they like actually turn into something something that actually has some kind of meaning. Right, like sometimes it could be meaning in the physical world. Like for example, there's people trying to use NFTs to sell or like real estate, for example. Like they would create a legal vehicle that tokenizes real estate, and then the token represents the ability to do things with it. There's I mean, ENS names are one example of an NFT that clearly has some other meaning and value to it. There's people creating games on top of NFTs, and there's even like lots of projects where one person creates the NFTs and then someone else creates some other game that involves some other set of NFTs that interact with the first set of NFTs. I think this even happened a little bit back in 2018. Like there was Crypto Kitties, and I think someone created a game called Crypto Dragons where you can create dragons that eat the kitties. Now like there's all sorts of crazy stuff. Like there's loot, there's ether orcs, and there's like an entire game, and the ether orcs can fight monsters and go on quests. So like actually just seeing that like go from basically just being a bunch of pet rocks that you can trade to actually being things that you can play with in interesting ways, I think is definitely really exciting. Seeing the DAO space like start evolving beyond just everyone making forks of Compound and to more sophisticated discussion about governance mechanisms is also something that's really fascinating. And just like the concept of DAOs becoming more mainstreamed, right? And people in the out in the world that are just interested, that originally were not really close to the crypto space, suddenly realizing like, hey, this is something like that could be important and that could be real, and like starting to think like, hey, can I join a DAO for this? I mean, even the Constitution DAO I thought was just a really fun crowdfunding experiments, right? Like that was something that was totally not even possible 5 years ago.
Maybe we jump in with some questions from the audience, because we promised that we will pass on the questions from the community to you guys. We start with the top voted questions, the top questions that has most votes. Vitalik, when in 2020 will the Ethereum mainnet be converted to proof of stake, and how does the Ethereum Alliance plan to compensate for the carbon footprint it has so far created?
I think most people are expecting a merge to happen within 6 months. So currently there is an ongoing proof of stake testnet effort, Kintsugi. So we already had a successful testnet of the proof of stake merge. This was worked on at the workshop that we had in Greece about 6 weeks ago. So all clients can talk to each other, can make a merge. Kintsugi is like an effort that goes to, I guess, the next level in terms of how professional and how big it is. And that would create a really big public network that a lot of people would participate in. And then after the new year, I think the plan is to come together and just actually like implement the final stages and turn the merge into like something that actually happens. I think the thing that still needs to happen at this point is like basically just a bunch of security auditing, a bunch of testing. Like we basically have the spec. We've had a test network. We're going to have one more test network. We might have 2 test networks, and then it's just we set a target date and we just push it out there. And then I guess in terms of the existing environmental impact, like my personal opinion on this is like, okay, theoretically we could just like purchase a whole bunch of carbon offsets, but like in my opinion, there's just much higher value and higher leverage things that could be done, right? Potentially even could be done with blockchain technology than just buying carbon offsets, right? Like there's you can invest in solar power companies, potentially even people in the community might end up spinning up some kind of solar power DAO at some point. There's projects in the Ethereum ecosystem that are like trying to create carbon trading marketplaces of different kinds. So like instead of like using a one-time pool of money to do something that makes things one time better, like actually trying to create some kind of applications that like could actually make a difference and like just improve the world's ability to like coordinate around reversing global warming more for the long term, I think is definitely something that I personally am excited about. It's definitely something that I think the Ethereum Foundation is looking into quite a bit, how we can be more actively supporting in those kinds of things, and people in the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance as well. So we'll see.
We have two questions from the audience about crypto cities. How do you see these evolve in the future, and what role do you think will protocols or tokens play in these?
So I think the reason why crypto cities are interesting is that basically crypto is interesting and cities are interesting, right? I mean, I think I don't have to explain why crypto is interesting here, hopefully, but the reason why cities are interesting, I think, is because cities are a really underrated unit of governance. In a lot of national governments, it's very hard to do very innovative and more new and radical things at the policy level. And if people try, it's often more dangerous, right? If some policy idea goes wrong, then it's the consequences are on a much larger scale. But on the city level, city governments can be smaller, they can be more nimble, they have an opportunity to do more and interesting kinds of things. There's a lot of very real diversity in culture, even between different cities in the same country. And so the chance that you can find one place that's willing to really get a lot of grassroots excitement around a particular idea and get it out there, I think is much higher. So there's already projects that are trying to build the city tokens, city DAOs, trying city NFTs. So I think the nice thing about those kinds of projects is one, these are ideas that could be used to improve the governance and improve the economics in cities. I think there's a lot of economic policy challenges in city governance, and these ideas could be used to create kind of more and better economic alignment between the residents of a city and the city. And also, they could be a really good opportunity to really empower this kind of more democratic kind of, I guess, civic hacking and civic open source coding communities, and just push the digital infrastructure of existing cities to the next level. So I'm excited about a lot of the existing experiments. I think what's happening in Miami is really interesting. What's happening in Reno and Nevada is interesting. City DAO is definitely really interesting and exciting. We'll see if they'll be able to actually spin a new city up and convince people to move to it. And I'm excited to see what people come up with next.
Great. You should check out Munich NFT too. We have a city NFT here too. There's a personal question from the audience. For many people, you are something like the face of crypto right now. How do you take this role? Do you sometimes wish that you would stay, it would have stayed anonymous, just like Satoshi?
I mean, at this point, I personally hope that a lot, just many more and better faces of crypto rise up, and I think a lot of that is happening already. I think the number of people that are just promoting and talking about and helping to develop and refine interesting ideas is much higher than there was 2 years ago. The number of people that are going out on the ground and actually trying to implement and build different things is much higher than it was 2 years ago. So I think a lot of that already is happening. And I mean, I personally would definitely love to have a lot of the pressure taken off myself. And I feel like the pressure on myself is already much lower than it was 3 years ago. I think at this point, for example, the Ethereum 2 roadmap, I think it can proceed perfectly fine, even if I don't contribute anything at all to it going forward. In the ecosystem, there's already a lot of people other than myself that are contributing ideas around how DeFi projects can work.
Der Künstler dieses Bildes ist ein neuronales Netz. Ein Computer.
Even the entire NFT gaming space was just created completely, not by myself, not by me at all. As I said, I didn't even predict it. So it's, I think, the crypto ecosystem is already very diverse, and there's already, far more people involved, both in the crypto space as a whole and in Ethereum land than there were 3 years ago. And I think it'll just keep decentralizing further.
Thanks. Christoph, we lost you for a second. That's why we jumped in with question from the audience and touched about the carbon footprint, about crypto cities, about Vitalik's personal role. Maybe you have another question to ask before we add another special guest to this round.
Oh, well, not too much. Maybe speaking of last question, maybe from my side, vision for the future. I mean, you already explained how in the white paper you already predict a lot of what we see today. You spoke about smart cities and things which will happen maybe in the foreseeable future. But if you think about Ethereum in 3, 10, or 25 years, which direction would you say? Is there more vision in your head you have for the project which is not yet or far from realized, which you want to share? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts. There's two ways you can think about the longer term vision. Like, I think you can think about the longer term technical vision, and then the longer term social vision. So I think the technical vision is like it just is what we've been talking about all along, right? It's Ethereum as it is today, but much more scaling with sharding, much more scalability, many more transactions, and much lower fees. You know, taking fees back to those 2014 and 2015 levels of less than 1 cent that just made it so easy for so much experimentation to happen, while at the same time having tens and hundreds of millions of users. I think and then more security, you know, more privacy, like just and more just use of zero knowledge proofs and all these wonderful math ideas that people have invented in the last 5 years. So that's technical. That's the technical vision, and then the social vision, I think, is just that like blockchains are basically this kind of ground for people to be able to just come up with all of these kind of new and more open and you know, transparent and collaborative ways for people to organize. Like whether it's people wanting to create a company to build a product, whether it's just a group of people who wants to play a game, whether it's a financial system or you know, something like an alternative to DNS, like whatever application you have, whatever thing you want to do, if it involves just needing to bring a lot of people together without wanting to have a few people need to be at the center of everything, then you know, blockchains, I think, can be part of that and can be a great way to do that more easily. And I think you know, the more that the technical vision goes forward, the more the technology can kind of fade into the background and people can actually focus on like just taking whatever cool stuff that they're thinking of that they want to build and actually going and building it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Christoph, we had you online. I asked Christian, who's next to me, what's the question that he wants definitely to ask. So that's, yes, you should ask this question.
Yeah, thank you. I have a geopolitical question. What role do you think cryptocurrencies will play in the global power game between, let's say, China, US, India, Russia, Europe in the future?
Again, I guess I personally view blockchains and cryptocurrencies as definitely being I guess kind of politically liberal, just like in the sense of being pro-openness and pro-freedom technology. Though at the same time they're in a unique position because they like blockchains are not tied to any existing state, right? And whenever any existing state does something, it's just very difficult for it to get kind of mixed up in that state's particular interests, whether it's its economic interests, its political interests, its desire to kind of become or stay a dominant player in the economy. But blockchains are something that like really doesn't come from any single country. And I think because of that, blockchains stand a better chance than anything promoted by countries and even anything promoted by centralized tech companies of kind of actually bridging more gaps and becoming accepted in more countries. So that's I think there's a lot of kind of a big unique opportunity for them to be just kind of base layer for just a lot of kind of very transnational and very open and global collaboration that can happen in like this more community-driven way, and that can help make the world a more open and democratic place, but like without kind of being part of one side's strategy of like trying to secure its advantage against another side. So I think there definitely is a lot of space in the world for this kind of thing, especially given what's just happened in the global political scene in the 2020s. And I think things built on blockchains do have a big chance of becoming a big part of a solution here.
At the beginning of the whole Ethereum project, did you think that you are writing history right now?
I mean, as I said, at the beginning, I thought Ethereum was just this tiny little project that I would work on for a couple of months and then go back to university. So I was definitely not predicting in like anything like the scale that this whole thing has gotten to today. But now it has, and now it is a significant part of the new world, which is just really interesting.
Great. I was just asking this question because now we have another guest with us who will join us now, the General Director of Deutsches Museum, where we are located at the biggest technical museum of Europe, because Christoph and Vitalik you are joining us today, not only to share great insights about Ethereum and your visions, but also because we are working on making Ethereum part of Deutsches Museum. Wolfgang Heckel, great to have you with us, and great outfit, actually. So what do you think about the idea to integrate the first blockchain project into your museum?
It would be absolutely fantastic. I'd like to thank you very much, Vitalik, and also Christoph. You are the guys of the future. We are the museum which receives around 1.5 million visitors a year, and we have to demonstrate and use your skills and your future ideas to bring our society into the future, because we are a democratic society and we believe that technology has to be shared in our house. And it would be absolutely fantastic if we could get some collaboration with you to display your artwork into one of the biggest science and technology museums on Earth. I will be proud to have so. Actually, Vitalik, I'm right now just trying to log in to one of the ongoing activities I have, which is super rare. I think it uses NFTs, and I would like to present my artwork also in super rare. Maybe if I'm not able to do this, you may help me. But I just had an auction where I could sell a piece of art which translates music into art by variational autoencoders, which is a AI-based piece of art. So
great that you already entered the crypto space.
Well, I'm just in the moment trying to do this, but I'm an old haptic guy, only working with my fingers and not with so much with my. And I need you young guys to help the Deutsches Museum and us to bring us forward on the sake of the democracy in our society. It would be great to have you in the museum on display. We have, for instance, just got the Sycamore, one of the first Google chips who has demonstrated quantum supremacy. We are just preparing I think the world's first grand exhibition, at least, on the idea of quantum worlds and quantum technology. This is also because historically Max Planck was member of the Deutsches Museum. Albert Einstein was member of the Deutsches Museum. And we have so many firsties and first breakthrough making technical objects. And now, Vitalik and Christoph, your object should be on display as a first breakthrough making object for mankind forever in the Deutsches Museum.
Great, thanks. Vitalik, Christoph, what do you think about this idea?
Yeah, and it's definitely sounds really cool. I mean, I'm definitely happy to do anything I can do to I guess help
Well, we would like to have you in person here.
Well, I guess next time I come to Germany, I will I will make sure to let Christoph and our German friends know, and we'll see what we can make happen.
Definitely, you promise, no? Also,
he's trying to lock you in. Christian, you have some more.
That sounds very good. I mean, what I personally learned from the crypto space is that you can make an announcement of an announcement. That's what we want to do today. The plan goes like this. We are planning a big festival next year, the 1E9 festival in summer next year, here in the Deutsches Museum and around the ISA everywhere in Munich. And our plan, our vision is now to work together with Vitalik and with Christoph and with artists to actually build an exhibit that we can put into the museum because it's not so easy to find a representation of a decentralized network. So this is our challenge. We want to solve that, and this is the announcement of an announcement. Our plan is to unveil the exhibit next year in summer when we do our festival here in the museum.
Yeah, great. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Christoph, for making this possible and giving us the connection. Thank you, Vitalik, so much for joining us and all those great insights. Thank you, Wolfgang, for joining us. And thank you guys out there for the many interesting questions. We couldn't answer all of them, but we tried. Sorry for the bumpy connection. So that was our highlight of today, the history of Ethereum and the announcement of Ethereum going Deutsches Museum. And now, thanks you guys out there.